Why bother knitting socks at all? Hello and welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka. You can find me elsewhere online as Asawa Telling, and links for anything that I mention in this video and show notes can be found if you click in the down bar below here on YouTube. Many of you may be thinking, why bother to knit socks at all? And in fact, over recent months and weeks, I have had quite a few viewers comment that they've been inspired by my sock knitting, or they liked the look of it, but it just wasn't for them. You know, they were tempted, but they hadn't started and they weren't sure where to begin. And I thought that it would be really fun to do a series of shorter videos just focused on socks, where I'll be sharing my skills, knowledge and experience with you. And if any experienced sock knitters are watching, or if any adventurous beginners or intermediates are watching too, then I do hope that you guys can also join in the comments below here on the video and just help to share our knowledge and spread our enthusiasm for sock knitting in general. So to open the series, why bother knitting socks at all? Sock knitting is something that I have heard used as a bizarre euphemism for someone that has got nothing better to do with their time, or that is really traditional, and just other kind of negative stereotypes, things that I wouldn't apply to myself at all. And I know, as I think all other sock knitters know, that sock knitting is really fun. It's a really creative activity, but you know, let's face it, we're living in a world where you can buy a pack of 5 socks for £5 from your local supermarket. So why on earth are we investing so much time, effort and money in creating something that could be seen as so disposable, especially when, you know, there are other things that one could be making in our own homes, whether it be garments that just get seen a lot more because it's, you know, higher up on the body, or if it's homewares or gifts or, you know, baby items, whatever it is that you like to make. Why bother knitting socks? So I had a really good think about this, and I've come up with 5 of my top reasons, and I'm going to be counting down from reason 5 to reason number 1 at the end. So let's get started. Number 5. Sock knitting allows you to really push your skills, because on such a small canvas it really has a range of techniques, and there's just loads of different things that you can be engaged with. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new way of doing things differently. Now I'm going to be releasing another separate video talking about the specific skills and techniques that you'll need in sock knitting, but I think that sock knitting is a really great opportunity to just try something new, and you will always, I promise you, find something new to do in a sock. I think that when you try something new on a sock, the stakes are relatively low, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't quite work out, or if it just produces an effect that doesn't gel with you, it doesn't fit right, it doesn't look right in any way, you can always give it away. Now obviously hand knitted socks are fitted to the individual body in a much more nuanced way than, you know, a more generic shop bought mass produced sock which contains a high lycra or polyamide stretch content. So hand knitted socks are slightly different. But despite that, I am positive that if you make a pair of socks that doesn't fit you, you won't have to look far to find someone else to gift them to who will be absolutely delighted. So you can always pass off your experiments onto other people. So number 5 is really about techniques, pushing yourself, building on your skills, trying something new. 4. Creative expression. Sock knitting is an incredibly expressive little tiny portion of the act of knitting, full stop. And the reason for that is because when you impose some barriers on your creativity, it forces you to push past those and come up with really amazing things. So with the basic canvas of the sock, pattern writers and designers have really experimented so far to do something different, to try something new, and just really push the boundaries and limits of their own creativity and technical abilities too. So for instance, recently I came up with the idea of having a ribbed toe for my twister lolly socks pattern, and I wrote that into the pattern, and that was really fun detail that I hadn't seen. And that's just one example amongst many. As I mentioned just now, the techniques that you can play with really are endless. Socks can really be seen as a blank canvas on which you can just impose your own stamp, whether as an individual knitter experimenting on the needles, or if you're working in design and artistry, Or alternatively, if you think about the range of amazing sock yarns that are out there on the market, both commercial, mass-produced sock yarns and sock yarns that are coming from smaller artisan-based companies and workshops where people are hand dyeing and hand painting sock yarn. There's just so much creativity out there. There's definitely something for everybody when it comes to the pattern, when it comes to the actual yarn, and honestly, it's really fun. I think the budgets of sock yarns, you know, there's really something to suit all budgets and all purse strings, and it's part of definitely what draws people to sock yarn, and it's just a great opportunity to use some really fancy yarn or go for colours that might be considered a little bit out there, like this really fluorescent highlighter, fluorescent yellow, on a small area, you know, and wear it and incorporate it in a small part of your outfit if you don't want to look too loud. It's a good opportunity to show that creativity in a specific area if you want to experiment and try something new and not necessarily have it in a large piece. Number 3, it's a very portable knitting project. Socks are small, you can take them out and about with you. Obviously I'm recording in, we're still in lockdown in London in June 2020. But I used to do loads and loads of sock knitting on my commute, and also you can take socks with you when you're just out and about, if you're visiting family and friends. They're pretty small, they're relatively unobtrusive, it's easy to work on them, especially once you get into a groove with the knitting, when you're at a point where you're just going round and round, like on the main part of the calf or through the foot. You know, it's easy to incorporate it into your everyday life, it's portable, it's not inconvenient, it's not like carrying a big sweater project around with you or a massive blanket, anything like that. Also like the fact that because they're small and portable, they're by nature, you can get done with them at a certain point. They aren't going to go on forever and ever and sort of hopefully not going to haunt you. Although some people suffer from what's called a second sock syndrome, where it's hard to get the second project finished. But personally, I'm confident that because of the very nature of socks, they're portable, you can fit them into whatever else you're doing and just kind of keep cranking them out once you get into the rhythm of it, really. Number 2, building on what I've already mentioned, because they're small and portable, I think that they're an accessible project without being easy or dull, and because of the smallness of them, they can potentially be a very affordable knitting project, like I said, suitable for all budgets. Sock yarn can be incredibly expensive, but it doesn't have to be. And also, if you become creative with how you use your sock yarn, and specifically your leftover sock yarn scraps, you can really eke out the sock yarn that you have. So for example, if I've bought an expensive hank of hand-dyed sock yarn, I'm not just going to knit one pair of socks out of it, I'm going to use up every last metre of what's left there. A pair of hand-knitted socks is always going to be more expensive than a mass-produced packet of socks, but I can tell you without a doubt that they will pay for themselves in wear alone. I have hand-knitted socks that I have owned and worn very regularly for years, whilst those mass-produced socks are wearing away at the heel and my toe is poking through. I do have a pair of hand-knitted socks that I have literally had for over 10 years and they're still going strong. It's really impressive. So I do think that because of their small nature and their relatively compact shape, socks do have the potential to be a very accessible craft within knitting in general. Lastly, we've got to number 1. My favourite reason for knitting socks is because, in my opinion, wearing hand-knitted socks transcends the everyday. If you think about it, we are so lucky that we have our feet to carry the weight of our whole body. Those 2 limbs, those 2 extremities are supporting our entire body, and I think it's a way of showing care and attention to a part of the body that's kind of quite far away from everything that's up here, and remembering that we're reconnecting to that with our craft, with what we're doing, with how we're dressing from head to toe. I love to use socks as an opportunity to style myself. So today I've gone for a forest green sock, and it's bringing out the kind of greenish turquoise hues of my jumper here today, and I think that's a really fun thing to do. You could certainly argue that hand knitting socks is a luxury that not everybody can afford, but I would argue back that the luxury of hand knitting socks completely transforms things that we would otherwise find mundane and even taken for granted, and that is something that is really worth considering. Also, when we see the labour that goes into creating what is considered a very, very basic and everyday item of clothing, I think that it helps us really, really appreciate the true value of clothing, materials and textiles in our lives, and helps us to remember that they shouldn't be taken for granted. That everything from the fibre to how the fibre is processed into yarn and fabric to how it's then created into something that we can wear and incorporate in our daily lives is something to really, really be thankful for, and to value those materials, and to value, people that create things in general, whether that be us for ourselves, giving things to other people, or the people who are generally nameless and faceless who do create things in factories. Because at the end of the day, even mass-produced clothing has been created by someone, by a pair of hands at some point. And I think that hand knitting something as seemingly simple but actually technically demanding as a sock really helps us to tap into that. So that's it from me. Those are my top 5 reasons, plus a few more, of why I enjoy sock knitting and why I think it's worth bothering to knit socks. But now I would really love to hear from you. Are there any newbie sock knitters or people who were maybe on the fence or skeptical that have been convinced by anything that I've said? Please do let me know in the comments down below. And if you are an experienced sock knitter who is watching, what would you tell beginner and wannabe sock knitters? What's the advice that you'd give them? How would you convince them that this is a fabulous and fun and exciting craft that is really, really enjoyable and worth taking part in? Over the next few months, I'll be releasing videos for a sock series, which I'm running in tandem with the Crimson Sockalong, which is a knit-along that is happening here on my YouTube channel, on Ravelry and on Instagram, for working on any of my sock designs that I have come up with. And as part of that, I've been releasing a new sock pattern every month for the 6-month duration of the Sockalong. That's it from me now. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for a regular fortnightly craft podcast where I talk about everything that I've been sewing, knitting, mending and more, as well as other videos with tips and tutorials just like this one, and just glimpses generally backstage. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.